As I sat at work, the hours burning away, I finally asked a question that has been aching inside my head for too long. Was this it? This monotonous routine can't be all that life has to offer. Can it? The days blending together, the weeks unrecognizable. I can keep doing this for years, but that's not the life I want. The question comes across as condescending, but this is exactly how the plot starts. The plot in Stardew Valley, a game that answers a question with a life that can be far more fulfilling. Stardew Valley is amazing. This is the type of game that must have needed a whole company to carefully craft and code. Millions of dollars, years of experienced professionals working day and night. But no, this masterpiece was made by one talented person. Stardew Valley was developed by Concerned Ape, also known as Eric Barone. However, making a phenomenal game wouldn't come without sacrifice. Oftentimes, the best art is made out of passion, love, and obsession. And obsession can take a toll. But he, like many other people, was also stuck in the same place. Out of college, he would be rejected by job after job, and it was a stressful time. So how did he get on his path to make Stardew Valley? Eric's first game was not Stardew Valley. As a kid, he made a choose-your-own-adventure game with his basic programming skills, but never really set out to make game developing his career. It seems that something about video games was enticing to him. For example, when he was about 18, he was in a band called the 17 Colored Feathers, and when they released an album online, he attached a video game to it called the 17CF game. He seems embarrassed about it now, but to go through the effort of making a game alongside his album seems to be a purely passionate choice, which suggests a sort of adoration for game design, or at the very least curiosity about what he could do. Small steps of curiosity like this would later serve as a foundation for his path in the future. Soon after, he would encounter a game that would serve as a huge source of inspiration: Harvest Moon. He loved this game, and while he played other games, he enjoyed this one the most. It was at this point in his life where he was considering a career in the game industry. But the more he researched and the more he read, he was soon discouraged by the stories of underpaid workers, stressful environments, and job insecurity. So, concerned for his future and wanting to take a safe route, he chose to pursue computer science at the University of Washington in Tacoma. Still surrounded by the computers he was comfortable with, but maybe not what he was passionate about. Eric was still full of love though. He met Amber, his soon-to-be girlfriend, at a local Auntie Anne's pretzel shop. They worked together and grew close to the point of forming a long-term relationship. He graduated in 2011 and now was looking for a job. He wanted a happy life with Amber and set out to make a little more money, but was met with disappointment. He kept failing and failing to find a job. He seemed lost for a moment, but relaxed and calmed himself down. Eric just needed to gain more skills. Coding seemed the most appropriate skill to learn and would help him get a job, so he started teaching himself. How? By programming video games. And this would start a sort of madness. But why choose video games to teach himself to code? Well, it could be because learning with a hands-on approach works extremely well for some people. Video games require all sorts of programming, and a person can choose how difficult they want the project to be, depending on the type of game they want to make. So he started working on a game about a new person in a town on a small farm. This practice game would end up being Stardew Valley. Eric had a lot to learn, but that didn't scare him off. He started at the fundamentals, focusing on the player, in the form of a farmer in a small empty area. He delved into research to create an authentic farming experience and coded the mechanics as closely as possible to provide realism. It was around this point that it wasn't just for a practice anymore. Eric had originally set out to just spend 6 months on this to build his coding skills, but Harvest Moon and other games inspired him, and he used Stardew Valley as a criticism on what he thought could be improved about Harvest Moon. Not out of cynicism, but out of passion. He found himself obsessed with creating this game, evident in how he would spend days fine-tuning the different avatar characteristics the players could choose. He taught himself pixel art and spent thousands of hours just learning how to get better at it. Eric's routine was to create something around, quote, 80% done, end quote, and then move on to some other aspect of the game. Then he would come back to that unfinished portion and hyperfixate on perfecting it with all sorts of details. Because this was a solo project, he would need to do the art, the music, the writing, and everything that made up the game. He would go on to create the townsfolk and write lines before rewriting them to fine-tune their characters. This amount of work would drive anyone insane, but he seemed passionate about it. Still, this would be a burden at times. Eric was perfecting the people and the townsfolk relationships in the game, but was neglecting his own in real life. He spent up to 12 hours a day, working 7 days a week, all to grow this game. He never really talked to Amber about giving up on looking for jobs, but his focus was clear. Eric was consumed by this game. Amber would remind him to eat, spend time with her, and take breaks, and Eric, throughout this, would grow to neglect her. Towards the game's end, they had a lot of conversations about whether he should give up on the game. Eric, after 4.5 years, had noticed his confidence was drained. He even thought that the game was bad. Amber and his friends around him were hesitant that he would even finish the game, let alone sell enough copies to justify the time he spent on it. His focus dwindled as he was approaching the final steps of releasing the game. Chucklefish would be the publisher of the game, and through a contact, he met Twitch streamers Siri, Bexy, and Prenz, who would playtest the game, pointing out bugs and concerns. However, because of the constant feedback, his motivation was fired back up. He would go through the bugs with the same meticulous perfectionism as before when he started designing the game. This hyper-focus would continue even up until the release, and would soon send him near panic as he noticed a major bug only a few hours before the release. On February 26, 2016, Stardew Valley would be released to the public, and what happened next would go on to change his life forever. Eric had said he'd be happy if the game sold 10,000 copies. 2 weeks after release, he sold over 500,000 copies of Stardew Valley. By 2020, he sold 10 million. This had been more than he or Amber could have dreamed of. He had fans now, too. Critics praised the game, and on Steam, players rated the game 10 out of 10. Eric continued the work, being the only person who could fix the bugs that came up. But he had done it. Finally, after making some additions to the game, he realized he needed a vacation. All that work, all those late nights, hit him hard, and perhaps the guilt of neglecting Amber hit him harder. He had time now to focus on what was important to him. Eric had done all this originally to gain skills for a job so that Amber and him could live the life he had always pictured. Along the way, he discovered a passion, but he still loved Amber. They took a vacation from Washington to the Grand Canyon, and even went to the beaches in California. She had been with him every step along his path to make Stardew Valley, and while there was only one developer for the game, he wasn't alone. How Stardew Valley starts strongly indicates that Eric disliked the 9-to-5 office work culture, but not how you might think. The presentation of unique people all lined up in the same office cubicles, boxed in, working for a soulless company with a fixed smile, seems to point out how people who may have a lot of potential end up in the same place and routine. You can even see Eric's perspective in how you enter the Joja market and see the tired cashier struggling to stay awake as they rub the bags under their eyes. Both of these details don't criticize the job itself necessarily. You don't know what the people in the office are doing, and Pierce being a cashier for his store isn't showcased with any disapproval. So why would the cashier working for Joja be any different? Instead, these details focus on the people themselves. They are tired, bored, and most importantly, unfulfilled. The reason why unfulfillment was captured so accurately likely was because that was what Eric went through before making Stardew Valley. He only chose to study computer science at the University of Washington because it was similar to his real passion for game design. He also had worked at multiple jobs over the years, and he could see firsthand how people were in jobs not to pursue a career, but because they needed to. Survival is not fulfillment. Yes, Eric did work long weeks, and he didn't enjoy every second, but he found fulfillment in making Stardew Valley. He wouldn't have finished it if he wasn't passionate about it. There wasn't any monetary motivation, at least not until release, and he sacrificed a lot to even keep making the game. His passion led to a purpose that kept him fulfilled. Money isn't a suitable substitute for purpose. The office people might make enough, we will never know, but what we can see is that they aren't content. The cashier working at Joja isn't either, but Pierce, who works at the local shop, is. He's thriving. Maybe not all the time, he's human, but he welcomes the player every time they walk in with joy, and he could sleep easy. Ultimately, when people find themselves in the same position as the player at the start of the game, when they ask themselves the question, is this it? They probably aren't thinking about money. They are thinking about purpose. And Stardew Valley shows you the answer. No, you do have a purpose. What gives people fulfillment will be different from person to person. Obstacles and problems will be natural, as it will keep you playing the game. But at the end of the day, you can go to sleep and look back at a well-lived day. If you enjoyed watching this video, then you will probably also enjoy watching another video about a video game developer who went from a broke college student who got his demo rejected by every publisher to a CEO making the new Spider-Man games. Thank you for watching, and as always, I hope you're a bit less bored.